Redditors with real-life butterfly effect stories. What happened and what was the series of events and outcomes? My mother wore heels to work and slipped on the carpeted steps, resulting in a broken high heel and a broken leg. While she was home recovering, she somehow developed allergies that led to her needing an inhaler. The inhaler interfered with her birth control, and now I have a brother 13 years younger than me. Mother confirmed that it was the penicillin that she was prescribed. Hate to tell you buddy, but there are no contradictions there. No inhaler would have affected her BC. Nearly every single friend I have in college is because one day in my gen ed health class we had to pick a seat that would become our seat for the semester. When I came in there weren't many seats left, and the people I sat next to ended up becoming my best friends and introduced me to all of my other friends in one way or another. High school, I didn't get into the AP history class wanted. Changed up my schedule, including a different gym class, without everyone I knew. I was heartbroken. I really wanted to teach, and without an AP class senior year, I was screwed. Made a new friend in gym class, who was wearing a volunteer firefighter shirt. He had just joined, seemed interesting, and he invited me to check it out. They paid for me to get my EMT. Fell in love with healthcare. Fast forward quite a while, and I'm an nurse and precept students and new nurses, teaching them how to survive in the air. I also do public outreach and injury prevention, and I love it. Glad I missed out on my class. Nice story, but for anyone else, don't get too worked up about missing out on an AP class. I tried really hard to get into an AP calculus class in high school, and was told I wasn't good enough in math to make it. I'm now a PhD student in bioengineering after majoring in physics and minoring in math in my undergrad. Just because someone tells you no doesn't mean they're right. So my then girlfriend, now wife, were planning on going away traveling for a very long time. Several years. The night before we left I was just packing my things, and at the last minute I decided to include some camera stuff. I had an SLR that I didn't really use too much. I very nearly didn't bring it because it was big and space was at a premium. While we were away, one of the things we did was work in a wildlife rehab center. At the time we were there, it was very quiet. Very few baby kangaroos to look after. But we had to be ready as it could change in an instant. Like in one day 3 could come in and boom. Full-time job. I used the spare time to really get to grips with the camera and learn about photography in general. Now I'm a wildlife cameraman. Had I decided to leave the camera, I never would be doing what I'm doing, which is sitting in a freezing cold shed for hours at a time waiting for some animals to do something that they're not doing. You really had me in the first half. I was going out to grab pizza and a case of beer for me and my roommate, but he texted me that he had a stomach thing, so I walked to a restaurant and ordered dinner at the bar and met a girl there, and now we are married and have 2 kids because my roommate had diarrhea. I can totally see a child telling the short version of this story to someone that doesn't really care, but the kid just hear it and repeats, "My dad married my mom because his roommate has diarrhea." If my biological mom hadn't asked her parents to watch me for a couple hours and then left town, I wouldn't have had the incredible and privileged life that I was given through adoption. My younger half brothers were raised by our biological mom and they are a total freaking mess. I'm more of a mom to them than their actual mom, and I would have been an absolute wreck also if she'd kept me. Instead I was given an amazing private education, all the sports and musical adventures, and most important, a healthy, loving home with 2 parents who taught me that just because you share blood doesn't mean you love, and just because you didn't give birth to a child doesn't mean you can't be their parent. The wife and I were having dinner in Hawaii one night on vacation. As we were getting up to leave, I noticed she hadn't finished her beer. I told her she should finish the beer since we paid some ridiculous price for it. Fast forward 30 seconds and we leave the restaurant and are walking the 3 blocks back to the hotel. About 50 feet in front of us as we're walking down the sidewalk on the left side of the road. A car comes flying out of a side street from the right and crosses through the street, hops the sidewalk in front of us, and smashes into a wall. If she didn't finish her beer, we would have been smoked by the car and most likely squished between the car and the wall. We always finish our beer now. If you hadn't drank at all, you could have had an action movie scene with a car crashing behind you as you casually walk down the street. I was walking to school and got distracted by a hedgehog that ran in a bush next to me, then a big butt tree branch fell in front of me. Would have crushed me if I didn't get distracted by a spiky little mouse scurrying in the bushes. I gave him a dead cricket the next day. He took it and ran off. Godspeed, spiky mouse. He took it and ran off. Gotta go fast, bro. Pregnant cousin usually takes the bus at around 5:10 p.m. after work. She was about to hop inside the bus, but she needed to pee really badly and the commute is about an hour long, so she decided to go to the restroom instead and just catch the next bus. That 5:10 bus ended up falling from a cliff. That baby knew what was up, pushed on her bladder. At the end of 6th grade, my class took a field trip on a whale watch. That night, I saw a commercial for a documentary TV series on whales. Ever since that day, I wanted to grow up and protect whales from being hunted. Today I work in the military specializing in marine preservation. Cool. I didn't even know that the military worked at marine preservation. TLDR. I overdrafted and caused 4 marriages and 5 babies. Longer version. I was just out of high school and new in town with no job. I was living off what savings I had left and my account went below zero without me knowing. I was overdraft charged like 10 times and owed $300 plus. I went down to the bank, spoke with the teller, and she ended up being a lifesaver. She worked with me and got all the charges removed. On top of getting the charges removed, we got to talking about my situation and she said that her son worked at a local restaurant and she would help me get a job. She was a woman of her word and by the end of the week I was working full time. Fast forward, I meet a cool dude who worked there. We became friends. I introduced him to my sister. They fell in love, got married and had 2 kids. His best friend came into town for the wedding and I introduced him to my roommate at the time. They fell in love, got married and had 2 babies. I also got my best friend a job at the restaurant where he met a girl working there. They fell in love, got married and had a kid. Right before I left I got my roommate a job at the restaurant where he met a customer, fell in love, got married and had a kid. As a bonus, my best friend, who I helped get the job, repaid the favor and got me a job at a different restaurant where I met a girl, fell in love and got married. Oh hey Cupid, how's it going? Received an incredibly high paying job offer to run our biggest competitor's team. Told my boss, even though I loved my job, but it was more than double what I was making. Boss agreed to a reasonable raise, still not near the offer. I decided to stay because I genuinely loved my team co-workers, and the money wasn't enough to leave that happy place. In exchange, I had to take up another account that meant a business trip I didn't have in the plans. Went on that trip and met my future husband. Couple of years later, we went on our honeymoon at a new resort in St. Lucia. Ran into someone I knew from homework. Turns out, the team that I'd been given the job offer for had made so much money that they had booked the same resort to celebrate. I sat there and went, wow, life is nuts. Would have ended up there, either way. Okay, this is sort of sobering along the lines of fate. Got arrested for growing weed, moved back home. Got first job I could at IKEA. After working there for over a year, randomly decided to check Craigslist for jobs and saw an opening at a cafe and they were hiring right then, so instinctively went for it. The cafe was connected and owned by one of the most popular brew pubs beer gardens in the area. They hired me to host there. Quickly worked my way up the ranks to eventually bar manager. Met girl of my dreams. We are now married with 2 amazing kids. Opened 2 more restaurants with them and currently assistant director of operations. Overseeing 3 restaurants at 3, 5, and 8 million a year in sales. Love my job. Love my family. Love my life. No idea what I'd be doing if I never got arrested or never applied for the cafe job. It goes to show that everything you want in life, you get, and you can't work for it. It just comes to you. Mike Scott. Getting my ears pierced the day after I graduated high school got me where I am today. I worked at McDonald's at the time and was scheduled to work that night. Before my shift, my girlfriend at the time convinced me to get my ears pierced. Well, when I showed up to my shift with these clear ear studs in, my manager gave me an option. Either take them out or go home. Being only 17 and not taking anything seriously, I went home. On my way home, I called that girlfriend's dad and asked if I could work with him laying tile. He gave me a chance, and I quit McDonald's that day. Worked with him for about a year until the 0809 feet recession caused us to run out of work. I got laid off. 4 months later, I landed a job in a new hospital doing admitting in the emergency room. Did that for 2 years before I got my phlebotomy certification. Been doing that for a few years and now I'm in my final semester of nursing school. I attribute everything I've done to that day my ex-girlfriend pressured me into getting my ears pierced. Who knows how long I would have stayed at McDonald's. One can only assume what would have happened if she got you to get your dong pierced instead. IDK if this counts, but during the Sri Lankan Civil War my dad and his family were chased out of their home and were forced to seek shelter at his cousin's house a couple towns over. His cousins only had one neighbor and that neighbor was my mom and her family. They used to meet up at the fence dividing their lawns and talk for months. One of the pictures from their wedding was them at that fence. That definitely counts. That picture sounds so cute. This happened 2 days ago. It was early in the morning and as I'm about to leave for work when my mom reminded me that I forgot my water bottle on the table while I was walking out. For whatever reason I decided to go leave my backpack in the car and then walk back into the house for the water bottle. Well, that took about maybe 10 seconds total. It started to rain heavily on my way to work and couldn't see very well, but I noticed the brake lights of the cars ahead stopping suddenly and some moving off onto the shoulder and decided to slow down and put the hazard lights on for the people behind to slow down. Well, turns out everyone was braking because a 4-5 car accident had just happened seconds before. All the cars were scattered across the highway, spread across the left-right shoulders, and another had hit the crash barrier. Basically a total bad mess. The drivers were still in their cars, I guess, processing what had just happened. After seeing it, I immediately started to think that if I hadn't gone back for the water bottle, there's a chance that I could have easily been in the accident or at least even closer to it. It tripped me out for the rest of the day. Almost everything that has happened in my life for the past 8 years is a direct result of me literally flipping a coin to decide between 2 colleges. I play the sport I do, have the friends I do, I'm dating the person I am, and very nearly every other aspect of my life is because a nickel landed on heads. Easy there, Harvey Dent. I procrastinated one day in high school by watching a foreign musical on YouTube. I ended up trying to learn the lyrics and eventually the language. That led me to discovering the field of linguistics, which I'm now majoring in. I don't know what I'd be doing now had I actually started doing my homework that day instead. I have a similar story. I procrastinated one day in high school and that led to me being depressed. Just last month, a friend of mine told me a story from his recent heartbreak. He, let's call him Mickey, had been with this girl, Minnie, for almost 4 years when out of nowhere, she told him she is leaving him and moving out. He had no idea the relationship was in jeopardy, but she dipped. Anyway, a few weeks go by. Mickey is hanging out with a co-worker of his with who he had just recently met and ends up back at his place just to hang out. On the fridge, he sees a note in Minnie's handwriting. The note detailed several issues in Mickey and Minnie's relationship, and so Mickey asks his new friend where he found this note. Turns out, this new buddy had gone to the same music festival as Mickey and Minnie a few months prior. The friend had found the note on the ground of the parking lot and thought, wow, what a sad and angry note. I'm going to keep this because it's so raw and interesting. The next day, Minnie came over to pick up some of her things. Mickey produced the note and it led to a long tear-filled conversation about their relationship and what went wrong. They didn't end up back together, because despite the pseudonyms, this is no Disney story. However, the resulting discussion helped them both achieve closure in a meaningful way, all because a random co-worker found and kept her discarded note in a festival parking lot. Everyone saying Minnie was hooking up with the co-worker, but I can assure you that was not the case. Mickey and Minnie had never even met the co-worker, as Mickey and the co-worker both worked jobs for a massive company and had never crossed paths until well after Minnie left. Mickey and him had just become friends days after the breakup. As for why he kept the note, he's just that kind of guy. He was moved by the content of the note, so he kept it. They weren't having an affair or anything, and if they were, that'd be well over because Minnie moved to another city the same week she left Mickey. Don't be too cynical, folks. Sometimes things just don't work out, and for those thinking Mickey is partly at fault for the relationship ending and being oblivious to the reasons for her sudden leaving, of course he is, and he recognizes this. He recognizes his role in the situation and doesn't hate her or anything. He just wants her to be happy and is heartbroken over both of their failures in making that happen. He's a good guy, and he's learning. Anyone saying I am in fact Mickey, I am not, haha, I'm happily married for 1 year, and you could probably comb through my other comments to prove it if you really wanted, but that would be boring. However, if you prefer the narrative that I am Mickey, far be it from me to dissuade you. I didn't say she was crazy, I said she was freaking goofy. I suffered with ball pain for a week or so to save a life. When I was a kid, my family went from the UK to visit my auntie who worked as a nurse in Germany. Being obsessed with Lego at the time, I was excited to be getting to go the original Legoland in Denmark on the Friday of the week for the weekend. Cue waking up to crippling pain in my groin early in the week. After assuming it was just strain and wait in a few days, on Thursday I was given the choice of going to Denmark the next day or heading to the hospital and staying. I chose the hospital since I was in that much pain. Turns out there wasn't anything to do but take painkillers and chill. When it got round to the Saturday, my aunt went out to get me some Lego to cheer me up. Her and my brother stopped at a swimming pool for a while on the way back, where she was throwing some of those weight toys that they got from the toy store into the pool for him to dive down and get. Some German teenagers were taking the toys, so my auntie tried to shout at them in broken German, so they left to a deserted part of the pool. Next minute they pull out a toddler from the pool, completely unconscious. The lifeguards apparently had no clue what they were doing and were trying to call an ambulance, so my aunt stepped in and performed CPR until the kid got airlifted to a hospital. A week or so later my pain had subsided, so we headed back to the pool. A woman came over to ask for some chairs in German and my mum said sorry, we are English, and the woman asked in English instead. She turned back around and said, you wouldn't by any chance know the English nurse that saved a little boy last week? And she replied, yes, it's my sister. The woman said it was all over the local news that this anonymous English nurse saved the boy's life, and she wouldn't have even been in the country if we were in Denmark at the time, let alone be at the pool, sending away the teens to find the kid and then saving him. I still have never felt more glad to get a pain in my balls. Awesome story. Glad your balls are doing better. If my former roommate wasn't an alcoholic going through withdrawal and had to be hospitalized, we'd have had enough money for rent. Then, I wouldn't have moved home. If I hadn't decided, while looking for a new job in my hometown, that it would be nice to have insurance, I'd have got another restaurant job instead of a manufacturing job. If I hadn't started that manufacturing job, I'd have never met a co-worker who was quitting for a much better job. Then, I wouldn't have also applied for a job with that company that was still hiring. I still work here 8 years later and hope to retire from here. It has its crappy days, or weeks, but the benefits are amazing and I'm making more than most college graduates. Had a surprise and rough breakup and decided to treat myself to a vacation somewhere I'd always wanted to go. Loved it more than I expected, and 6 months later I emigrated there. One day I was working at a surf shop, and at the end of my shift at 6 PM, I wanted to hang out for a bit to flirt with one of my co-workers, which led to me witnessing a bad car accident 30 minutes later, which led me to meeting an off-duty EMT on scene, which led me to become an EMT paramedic, and now I love my career. If I didn't decide to flirt with said co-worker, I wouldn't be an EMT. In grad school I said frick it and submitted a conference proposal the night before the deadline. Long story short, I basically have my job, my city, and my wife as a direct result of that decision. Damn, you got a city. I realized that I have come full circle in being a loser. Years ago, I was a cashier in a Walmart type store and lived in a trailer park in number 38. Over a 25-year period, I went to college twice. 2 one-year programs, bought a house, got married, got divorced, sold a house, been single mom, had my own little retail business, yet never really got anywhere. I now work back as cashier in a Sobeys type store and live across the street in the same trailer park in number 48. It is incredibly disheartening to know that after all my efforts, I have gone absolutely nowhere in life. I wouldn't say nowhere. I bet your kids might have some great things to say about you. Unless of course they're teenagers, in which case they won't have great things to say about anything. But it doesn't sound like you're a quitter and they will see that. In any case, just keep cranking away, things will change eventually. You never know what's around the corner. Entering middle school, I had to choose between foreign language or music. I made my decision. My mother came into my room later that night to make sure I was certain in my choice. I chose music, which led me to pilot training, to radio, to my ex-wife, my kids, Massachusetts, twice, my new partner, and a career in IT. I can trace my entire adult life to a decision I made in 5th grade. I was working a really dead-end job and my car let me down on the way to work. I was an agency worker, so they couldn't at a drop of a hat terminate my employment. They rang me up 30 minutes after I told them I was going to be late in. At that point my car was recovered and I was on my way in, to tell me not to bother as I no longer had a job there. This made me go back to college and have a goal to go to university. I graduated with honors from university, and after a long time of applying and getting the knock, I built up a portfolio good enough to land a graduate job, which is doing something that I love, that has progression and will give me financial stability. One of my friends, English male, and I, Scottish female, played World of Warcraft. This was during what LK. I took a break due to uni work etc. While I was away, he had went up to this guy in Orgrimmar and randomly called him a W. His sense of humor. They got talking and became friendly, so my friend joined his guild. When I came back after my break, my friend asked if his pal could join the guild too. The GM invited me, not knowing if I was male or female. All he knew was that my friend wanted his pal in too, so just assumed I was also an English male. We got talking on Ventrilo and he was surprised I was a Scottish female as he was currently living in Dundee. He's a Serbian-Austrian native. We talked for a while, met up and now live in Austria. We have been married for 7 years, together for 8 and have a son. We'd both been playing WoW since vanilla. Playing the same faction on the same server, yet had never crossed paths. We always tell people we met because my friend called him a W. I got fired from a company because I asked a co-worker if he was gay in order to set him up with my gay friend. I was 21 at the time and really dumb. I had some savings and unemployment money, so I decided to try for a career in the movie industry. I worked for free on a couple of movies and gained some set experience. Well, the savings ran out and I needed to get a real job, so I answered an ad on monster.com to be an assistant at a pretty large P company, since they wanted someone with set experience and office experience. I was the assistant to the head of production, which meant I was doing most of his grunt work, booking talent, locations, crew, managing budget, etc., as well as handling distribution and fulfillment. Basically, I became a P producer. I left that company, which was straight P, and went to work for a gay fetish wrestling P company, where I met a guy who would introduce me to another guy who worked for Digital Domain. He hired me as a day player on the Italian job, and in the past 16 years I've worked on 20+ major Hollywood movies, including Avatar, Suicide Squad, and Aquaman. So basically, if I wasn't an idiot, I wouldn't have the career I have today. Makes it really weird when kids ask me how I got into the movie biz. I moved to New Zealand to pursue my dream because my ex-fiancé was playing music on a speaker in public and wouldn't stop when I asked. That one incident cracked the relationship so badly it led to him breaking up, then crawling back. In those 5 hours, I applied for the school I wasn't going to go to because of him. I'm now with the love of my life and couldn't be happier. Back in the 80s, my mom studied abroad in England. A couple days before her flight back home to the US, she got too homesick to wait any longer and spontaneously bought a ticket home early. The flight she was originally supposed to take was Pan Am Flight 103, where all 243 passengers and 16 crew died. If not for her homesickness, her and my dad would not have met and my brother and I would not have been in existence. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.